Warbirds, back with our second season ever. I'm Liberty Spidell.
I'm Josh Hart, I think.
I'm Liberty Spidell. Okay, let's mute that.
Somebody had the stream up in the background.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if we have any video.
Which is good. Just
yeah, I forgot.
Because otherwise, echo.
Yeah, professionals.
And who are you again? Guy with the Star Wars background?
All appearances to the contrary, I am not
Yoda. So last week we had a test run with our new setup, and thank you so much to Ryan Carroll for the technical advice. So want to give him a big shout out. You can catch him on Atlantis Gaming, also on Twitch. Do you know what their exact link is?
Twitch.tv/AfterAtlantis.
Yep.
Okay. Well, you'll also be able to catch us, the three of us, doing Dungeons and Dragons with him tonight, actually. So if you're
tonight at 8 p.m. Central.
Yes, exactly. So just some quick housekeeping stuff, and then we'll bring our guest on. We are having a new format, partially because of just changes to YouTube. So we wanted to let you guys know that it'll be a much quicker system to get it out on the podcast feed when we do record. So I'm really excited about that, and it's going to simplify my life so much.
Yes, it will.
So real quick, it's been about 1.5 years since we actually did a full-blown episode. What's
wow.
Yeah, it has, and some of those haven't even gone out yet. So what's new from us? Just real quick. I mean, books and life, and take 2 seconds.
All right.
Go for it.
I was published in the Voices in the Pews anthology, put out by Llama Press.
Llama. That's fun to say.
Yes. And I'm currently working on book 2 of my Sigil Bearer series. Book 1 will be released in serial format starting February 2020.
Woohoo!
Excuse me.
Your turn, Aaron.
What? Where am I?
What's new?
I knew it was my turn. I was about to say something. You jumped in there.
I'm supposed to keep everybody rolling. That's my job.
Yes.
And it's fun to tease you about that, Jay. It's a line from Galaxy Quest. It's a stupid job. It's the only job I have. Anyway, what's new with me? Let's see. A New Threat and Eternal Rise of the Dragon Girl are both out right now on Amazon.
Yep.
About half done with the sequel to Eternal 2, which I had a subtitle for it, but I think I'm going to change it. Include something about cat girls or whatnot. But anyway, I'm working on finishing that up as my NaNoWriMo project for this year. Speaking of that, we interrupt this regularly scheduled Nano to bring you an author interview.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
So I personally have released one book since we last got together. It's Echoes in the Void. It's a sci-fi romantic suspense. So it's set about 110 years in our future, and it takes place primarily on a spaceship. It's pretty fun. So definite PG-13 rating, but what else can you expect from me, honestly?
That's true.
So
all right.
And the next book in the Darby Shaw Chronicles should be out sometime in the first quarter of next year, and I'm looking forward to that. So,
I still haven't read Omission yet.
Oh, you need to do that.
I do.
All right. So, all right. So we do have a guest, guys.
We have one more thing of housekeeping. So
okay.
So with the new format, with the changes we're trying to implement, we are going to be starting Patreon. So as of now, you guys can support the show if you love the show at patreon.com/LDK podcast, correct?
Correct.
And the information about the levels is on the website, on their website, and we'll go into it after the interview. How about that? So,
Okay, sounds good.
so
So, without further ado,
I thought we had further ado. No, this is definitely much ado about nothing.
we welcome JJ Johnson.
Woo!
He lives in Edmond, Oklahoma, with his wife and their 2 hobbits, where he enjoys making up fun adventure stories with his kids and then turning those adventures into books. Welcome to the show, JJ.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for having me.
hey, we're happy to have you.
Yeah.
Thrilled. Kidding. You really are.
Aaron, do you want to ask the first question?
Huh? No. Me?
Yes.
Yes.
What is your name? What is your quest? And what is your favorite color?
Ooh, quest. Oh, goodness. My name is obviously JJ Johnson. JJ stands for nothing in particular. Actually, it stands for Jeremy Johnson. But when I was in the 3rd grade, there was like 4 or 5 Jeremys, and I think our teacher started calling us JJ, just to keep us all separated. And I sort of just stuck. So the only person that calls me Jeremy, I think, is my mom, and that's when I'm in trouble. So, is JJ Johnson's what I've gone by most of my life. So, favorite color is I kind of like the darker colors. So black, dark blue. My wife says I look good in blue, so I guess I'll go with blue. So of
Good
course that was
choice.
when I was young and hip, probably. So, my quest is just to I'm gonna get a serious answer, just to enjoy life one day at a time, because that's all you can do. So
Good answer.
enjoy. Yep. So that's it for that one.
Yeah,
That's a good answer.
I wonder if JJ was kind of like BJ Honeycutt from MASH, where they had the entire episode about what BJ stands for.
Yeah, we could have done that. We could have just spent the whole episode just talking about what JJ could be up for.
Okay, you know what? That'll be a bonus episode.
Bonus episode. There we go.
Oh my goodness.
So, I'll ask the next question.
That's fine.
All right. So, JJ, tell us about your latest project.
The one that just came out, or the one I'm working on now?
How about
Actually,
both?
they're all the same. They're all the same. So I just released Iggy and Oz, book 1 in the Iggy and Oz series, which is a new middle grade series that I started writing in August of 2018. It released in September this past year. Book 1 with Plastic Dinos of Doom. And basically, Iggy and Oz is the story of Iggy and Oz Reisner. Iggy is a 12-year-old boy, and Oz is his 9-year-old adopted brother who is from China. And the story takes place in a small neighborhood known as Whispering Pines. And what happens in Whispering Pines is there's this elderly gentleman by the name of Mr. Chesterton who passed away. He was kind of a quirky old man that nobody really knew anything about, but he had an estate sale, and all the items in his house were spread out through the neighborhood in this estate sale. And Iggy's parents bought this massive giant chest, like a giant treasure chest, and they put all their old plastic dinosaurs inside. And mysteriously, these dinosaurs come to life and just start wreaking havoc on the neighborhood.
Quick question.
All sorts of
Like,
stuff.
come to
Yeah,
life,
go
you
ahead.
mean like life scale or like Indian in the cupboard style?
I'd say more like Indian in the Cupboard, because Indian in the Cupboard was a good influence for this book. A lot of the books that I grew up reading as a kid kind of went into this story. So some of the things like Indian in the Cupboard, the Bill Wallace stories, Danger on Panther Peak, Trapped in Death Cave, Hank the Cowdog, and even a lot of the Goosebumps style stories that I grew up. Just kind of those type of stories that I grew up reading is kind of one of the biggest things I wanted to do with this project. And so book 1 was Iggy and Oz, the Plastic Dinos of Doom. Book 2 is the Soda Pop Wars. They discover an old vintage soda pop machine that gives them superpowers when they drink the soda pop. And then book 3, which I just started book 3 last night, and it is called The Living Snot. Basically, Oz's snot mysteriously comes to life, and it's this giant blob that starts taking over the neighborhood. And
All right, I gotta get these for my boy. He'll love them.
So those are the 3 books I'm working on now. There's 10 books planned in the series. So
Yeah, JJ and
Awesome.
Josh and I are in a mastermind group together, and I remember when you were asking questions about how to stop the snot.
Yep.
That was
yes, everybody in the mastermind group, Liberty and Josh are both in the mastermind group with me, and we help each other brainstorm from time to time. And Steve Raza, Jason Joyner, Josh Smith, a lot of those folks, Becky Dean, Jesse Roberts, and Tina Gollins, they're all in there. And I asked the question, hey, I'm stuck on this outline. How would I stop a giant blob of snot? So I have the snot. It came to life, but I had no idea how to stop. Well, yeah, but we had some fun. Yeah, they do try the giant Kleenex. You'd be surprised. They try and fashion a giant Kleenex, but I'm not going to give away any spoilers. So,
I mean, the thing is that you have a PA in there who, medical professional who can give advice on what would actually do.
Yes, yeah. So.
Kleenex failed. All right, we're trying a giant pepperoni needle full of antibiotics.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, that's the Iggy and Oz series. So it's a fun series,
Okay.
just goofy kid stories mainly for boys, most of all, I think you could say. But
I'm sorry, I'm gonna
you're good, man. You're good. If this was a serious interview, I'd be concerned with you three. All right?
You should jump in and watch us on D&D tonight.
I might just do that. I might just tune in to see the chaos.
Yes, it's.
So, JJ, do you have a favorite scene or character from this series?
Oh yeah. Let me start with Iggy and Oz the Plastic Dinos of Doom, because that's the one that's out. I would say my favorite character is probably Iggy, because there's a lot of me in Iggy. A lot of me when I was a kid in Iggy. Just so I'll just leave it at that. My favorite scene to write in the story is I'm not really sure what chapter it is, but it is called the vomit chapter. And when you get there, you'll know. And I went to school the other day, and the one thing that everybody kept asking me at the school, all the kids, was, there's this girl in there named Jen, who is kind of the voice of common sense. Because let's face it, most of the, growing up, most of the people that got me out of the trouble were my friends. They were girls, and they had the common sense, and I didn't. So she's the voice of common sense. And Iggy has a massive crush on her. But you can just imagine what it feels like to just start barfing in front of your biggest crush, and barfing on other people. So the vomit chapter is my favorite chapter. It is also every kid's favorite chapter, but it is the chapter that most parents tweet me and say, that grossed me out, but I couldn't stop laughing. So the biggest question all the kids had was, does Jen like Iggy? Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
So vomit chapter. All the kids love it. All the moms and dads get grossed out, but all the moms and dads laugh. So I feel like I survived. Yes, it hasn't been placed on a banned list yet. So,
but to be fair, it's only been
burned out, or something.
It's only been out 2 months?
Yeah.
Liberty already.
Yeah, it's easy to break liberty though. So
that's true.
Breathe in, go out. Breathe in.
Hey that.
So I'm gonna go off script for a minute.
Fine, that's why we have a shortened question list.
Yes. So your previous books were not middle grade. So can you talk a little bit about how how your process has changed going from horror to middle grade?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I was writing mostly dark suspense, a little bit of the horror genre. I say My Friend Louie and Chamber are probably definitely horror, and Compulsion was more of a short story that dealt with psychological issues. Although a boy's baseball bat talking to him is pretty psychological.
Yeah.
But I was writing that, and I grew up reading Stephen King. I grew up reading, a lot of the Ray Bradbury stories that borderline on the idea of horror, like the October
Mhm.
Tree and all that stuff. So those are a lot of my biggest influences in writing right at the beginning. But I just kind of felt a disconnect between what I was writing and what people. Whether or not people were actually enjoying it. So
Okay.
sometimes you just kind of go through that. And I'd say I came back and just, from last year's writers conference in 2018, just not necessarily depressed, because I don't want to use that word, because people actually deal with a lot of depression, but I felt like I was just not happy with what I was putting out there. And I've been considering writing a Goosebump style middle grade story for a long time. And I just never had done it. So making the transition was very hard, because writing middle grade is probably one of the hardest things I do. But
Okay.
once I figured it out, and it just sort of clicked one day, because the hardest thing was getting the voice right,
Mhm.
getting the voice to sound like a 12-year-old kid instead of sounding like an adult. And it took me a while to do that. But once I started writing Iggy and Oz, and Iggy's voice really got inside my head, um, I just fell in love with the characters and decided that transitioning from the horror genre over to the middle grade genre was really a good move for me. And I really felt like it was a story that could really connect with, because what I wanted to do was I kind of wanted to bring most of the stories that you see out there right now for middle grade, especially for boys. And I have no problems with Captain Underpants, or, Dog Man, or Last Kids on Earth. I love those books. My kids love those books. But in a way, they're sort of the graphic novels more than anything else. And I really wasn't seeing a lot of middle grade out there that was just books for boys where kids just go on adventure, and it's just nothing more than just simply a moral lesson that they're learning.
Mhm.
And so I wanted to write an actual book without illustrations, without all the cartoons and things like that. And it was sort of a risk, but all the feedback I'm getting from both teachers and parents seems to be that it was the right move. So it was a hard transition, very difficult, because it took me a while to get that voice right. And honestly, when I sent it to my critique partners, I really was not sure if I had pulled it off, but they came back and loved it, and so I was felt like I was going in the right direction. But it was very hard. It was challenging. And that was the hardest thing, was getting that voice right.
Okay.
Yeah, that would make sense. I personally, I would find it difficult to move from writing 30-something detectives to a 12-year-old kid, so I can definitely
Yeah.
understand that.
Yep. Agreed. All right. Your question is next, Liberty.
I thought that was Aaron.
No, that is Aaron.
Number 4.
Yes.
Yes.
Woohoo!
We're professionals.
I didn't lose track of the marks. Professional? Where? Where's a professional? I don't see one. Anyway, so about editing. What does your editing process look like?
Yes, a good term that everybody loves.
Oh,
Well,
not as monoculture as our next question, but we'll get there in a moment.
editing. Oh gosh, I send it to my critique partners and I tell them, what did I do wrong? So, I don't do a lot of. I use my critique partners mainly to get the content right, as far as
Mhm.
plot, structure, things like that. Making sure I'm heading in the right direction with the story. Make sure it makes sense. And I'm pretty confident in my process of how an Iggy and Oz story needs to be structured. I'm using the same structure all the way, through each book, but my editing really comes down to what is the most difficult for me, and that's obviously the grammar and proofreading and things like that.
Mhm.
However, Iggy has such a distinct voice, and he breaks the fourth wall quite a bit. So
Nice.
finding somebody who understands the
Licking his wounds
story,
and that more and more.
somebody who understands the story but also understands Iggy's voice is really, really important to me. So, I work with editors who have kids in the same age range that the story's targeted towards. And, I really just kind of take their advice and go with it, because there's some things that I know I'm weak in and some things I know I'm strong in. So when I write the Iggy and Oz story, the first thing I'm doing is it's a lot of just dialogue right at the beginning. And then I go in, I add the description, I add, kind of beef it up a little bit. But my editing, as far as just basic editing, I really just depend on people I trust, and people who I pay to get it right, or help me get it right. And sometimes when you have working with an editor is such a fun experience, because sometimes you just have to look at it and say, well, their suggestion here is wrong. I need it to be this way, and there's a reason I need it to be this way. So sometimes it's a judgment call, and so.
Mm-hmm.
My editing's basic. I mean, because the Iggy and Oz story is it's such a unique writing voice and style that I really have to find somebody who understands the story. And
That makes sense.
my opinion is, if my critique partners don't get it, and if it doesn't come across right to them, then, and both of them are good editors themselves, so freelance editors anyway, if they're not getting it, then it needs to change. And I usually trust their judgment. So for me, and my advice for other writers is, find writers who you trust. Find critique partners who you know and who you can depend on to give you good feedback, but also understand the heart of the story as well, and don't just want to turn it into something that it's not. Because at the end of the day, I don't think readers care about 90% of the things that we as writers care about, and we as writers are going to be much harder on other writers and ourselves anyway. So sometimes I think you have to err on caution of, don't let the story change simply because somebody's making a suggestion. And I see a lot of new writers do that. So you got to be confident in your own process, but you have to find the right people who you trust and depend on to really keep the integrity of the story right.
Yeah, sometimes
That's true.
Sometimes people's suggestions, you're like, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. That'd be awesome. And other times,
Yeah.
well, I don't really want the story to go in that direction, but if that's what people want, like, no, trust your own instincts, like you said. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do have
Yeah.
to trust your own instincts. I mean, I had one of those examples this week. I was editing the next Darby Shaw Chronicles book, and my editor and I had an argument for like 2 days about the use of a single word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
A naughty word, wasn't it?
gosh, what no, it wasn't.
No.
But I stuck to my guns just because I knew that this was right. So,
Aaron.
No.
Aaron, you can't be heard on stream.
What?
You can't be heard on stream.
I can't be heard on stream. Why can't I be heard on stream?
Yep. I don't know.
That's weird.
And I need to plug my computer in.
All right, if I crank that back up, is that better?
I mean, I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, but we're on the Discord call. Thank you to our tech support. Again, that's After Atlantis.
Okay, he says that you've got it now. So,
Okay. So
I
it's
wonder
working now. Okay, I must have had. I cranked the microphone down a little bit more because it was picking up other stuff, but
Okay.
I don't know. Well, that's lovely.
All right.
All right, remember,
Now my computer's not going to die.
I'll leave that alone.
And we can hear Aaron.
Woo!
Good. We know who we are. So,
Yes.
So,
All right. So,
JJ, I know you and I have talked privately a lot about different marketing techniques, but what have you been finding has been working for you the best?
Oh, marketing. Oh, well, I work in marketing
Everybody
for a
hates
living,
marketing.
so
Oh yeah,
I like to think I know a little bit about it. But marketing changes. I think one of my favorite people to follow for marketing and Liberty, Josh Hart, you guys both know this, is Tim Grohl. I think he's one of the most fascinating guys. He's he launches books all the time. I love his definition of marketing. He says marketing is basically building long-lasting connections with people by being relentlessly helpful. I think that's the thing that sometimes we forget is marketing isn't just about pushing product all the time. The best way to push product is really to make a big time connection. I was looking at a data report the other day, And I've never really been one to think that social media helps sell books. I think social media helps you gain outreach and helps you gain permission to connect with people. But, one of the biggest things that came across was, they broke it down on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and email. And, with Twitter, your biggest engagement is 0.02% to 0.09%, which means people are going to click, engage, like, retweet, about 0.02% to 0.09%, unless
That is
you're like
not
a
much.
massive. It's not, unless you're like a massive celebrity as well.
Yeah.
And they even took some of the celebrities, big time celebrities, and they showed, look, they may have 100,000 followers, but look how many people are actually liking their posts. Look how many people are actually retweeting the post. And if you broke it
True.
down, it was coming down to exactly that. Facebook was a little bit better with 0.5% to 1%. Instagram had the highest from 1 to 3.5%. But again, you can't place links and things like that within Instagram. They have to go to your profile for that. But email marketing had the largest engagement there was. And MailChimp put out a report a couple months ago, and they showed all the different industries from publishing to cooking to health and fitness, all the way down to small businesses. And I think plumbing had the lowest engagement on their email marketing. And it was at 15. It was at 15%. So
Nobody
plumbers
cares
are getting
about plumbing until the toilet backs up.
exactly.
Right.
But people were clicking on discounts and on things of like just get your pipes updated and checked before winter and things like that. 15% engagement. So when you look at social media and the highest being Instagram at 3.5% versus email being at 15%, I always tell people the best thing you can do is to build your newsletter list. Now, Liberty and
Okay.
Josh, they saw my sales on the launch. They know what I did.
Yeah.
And I kind of broke it down, basically showed that, look, the majority of my sales I can usually trace back to about my email list. So that's the first thing, is I think email marketing and getting a good newsletter that you send out on a monthly basis. Most people say, well, I don't like receiving emails every single month or every single day or blah, 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 blah. The biggest mistake that an author can make is to assume that your buying habits is also reflected in the people you're targeting as well.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
that is one of the things we think, well, I don't like it, but that doesn't mean your fans don't like it. And that's another big thing that you need to realize. And so I send out a monthly newsletter, and that's what I do. And I try to be as engaging as possible. And I call it the Oz Files. It's written in Oz's voice. That's something I've started with the Iggy and Oz stories. And
Very
in that, I'm
nice.
trying to offer content to people on my newsletter that isn't just about me. That's maybe about things that they are also interested in, whether it's middle grade book reviews, whether who's on my newsletter. Well, it's mostly parents. So it may be parenting advice or a blog or an article I read about, taking your kids on fun camping adventures or something like that. That's what I want to be able to do. So I think when the more you engage with people, and then when you do send out that newsletter that basically says, hey, I have a new book out, they'll be more inclined, statistically, as they've shown, they'll be more inclined to basically do that. So newsletters is something I'm a big firm believer. I'm also a big firm believer in public events. I think that I've sold
Okay.
more books through direct sales than I have online, which is why I tell people, don't worry about your sales ranking. So many people worry about their sales rankings, and I hear this all the time. Somebody said, well, I don't want to put my book up for pre-order because it's going to hurt my sales rankings on launch day. Who cares?
Mhm.
Unless you're ranking in the top 100 of the entire Kindle score, nobody cares about your sales ranking.
That's right.
That's
Nobody's
true.
nobody's
True.
going to some mediocre list off to the side and saying, "Hey, look, this is the number one book in space cowboy adventures with robots." That's not how shoppers shop. You got to realize how people actually search for books on Amazon.
Ooh, this
And
book ranks 999,000 instead of 100,000. I'll buy it. Yeah, nobody does
exactly.
that.
So
Yeah. No,
you
that's
have to
not.
look. You have to get as many sales as you want when you can get them. And so if that puts it up for pre-order, put it up for pre-order. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
get frustrated when I see people worrying about their sales rankings, because sales rankings is not a reflection. It doesn't drive sales. All it is a reflection of how your book is selling on Amazon, and
Right.
Amazon's only one channel.
Mhm.
So I
Yep.
always tell people all the time, don't ever pass up an opportunity to get sales. And if that means putting it up for a pre-order on Kindle, do it. Play with price controls as well. I think the next thing that I'd say is Liberty and I are both big into AMS ads.
Mhm.
We both taken Brian Cohen. Brian Cohen's one of the people. Brian Cohen, Brian Meeks. I trust both of them because they're not just selling you information that's not tried and tested. People like Brian Meeks, Brian, Cohen, Tim Graw. These are people who have put people on the bestseller list, whether it's on the top 100 in Amazon or whether it's in the New York Times or USA Today, because they've tested the methods that they try. So I always tell people those are the three people I would follow when it comes to any type of Amazon marketing or just newsletter marketing. Tim Graw's the newsletter guy. There's are mainly the AMS ads. So I play around with AMS ads because I think it's fun and it's a low risk investment. You set your budget, and hardly ever are you ever going to set your hit your budget every day. There's some days where I never hit my budget. My budget's $5 a day, and that's just because I want. And when I set that do Amazon, I do it based off of what I think people are searching for, not necessarily the list or the books. Because I want to target certain searches. And so I think that's the important thing, is just trying to figure out how can I get my book in front of people. And so for me, it's newsletter, it's AMS ads. I haven't done a whole lot with BookBub, but it is something I want to explore later on, maybe when I have a 4 or 5 books in the series. But for now, I think BookBub is just for just one single book. I don't think it's necessarily a good investment at the moment. So I always tell people, look at what your investment is. How much are you investing? How much are you investing in it? How quickly are you going to meet your ROI, get a return on that investment? And is it following the 80-20 rule? Is this causing me to do 80% of the work that's only going to net me 20% of the results? Or is this 20% of the work and it's going to net me 80% of the results? So for me, that's what it is. It's ads, it's newsletters, and it's trying to do in-person events. And I did a school signing the other day with a classroom. I had a blast. I got to connect with a lot of kids, got to send them all home free bookmarks and stuff like that. And I've had 4 or 5 people that have signed up for my newsletter list just simply because of that.
That's awesome.
So the more people you can get on your newsletter, the better. And social media is fun. It's a great place to be and connect with readers and things like that. I just don't think it necessarily moves people in, and I don't think it gets your stuff out there in front of time. So I'm a little leery of Facebook ads and Instagram ads and things like that. But I think if you're going to spend some time doing something, you really need to be building up your newsletter list and working with the advertising necessarily has been proven to work. So that's my advice on marketing.
All right, thank you.
I'm a marketing professional.
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
So for those who may be able to see the chat, the name of those 3 names with Liberty's corrections are in our stream chat. So thanks to our marketing professional who doesn't say he's a professional.
Sure. Sounds professional to me.
Okay, now
we need a D6, don't we?
I have a D6.
Ooh. I say mine is buried somewhere in the desk in front of me. I better find it before tonight. I still haven't found my caltrops, by the way.
What?
Otherwise known as a D4. A couple nights ago, I dropped my dice, and I found all of them except for the D4, which is shaped like a little pointy triangle. So I'm terrified to find that with my foot one of these days.
Yes.
I have my dice.
All right, I'm totally tuning into your D&D tonight.
Do it.
Oh, you
do
should.
it. Just a point of business. We have it set up to where you could watch it here or at After Atlantis, I do believe. So, that being said,
Roll the die. What? Huh?
Aaron, it came up a 3.
3.
So go ahead and read C.
Why did you do this to me?
I'm
we rolled
actually
a
wondering
3,
if
and I'm like, wait, I don't have any numbers. These are all letters. What the?
I have no idea what's going on, so I'm
One,
kind of
two,
concerned what's
three.
coming.
3 is C. Okay, who would be in your fellowship on an epic quest?
Oh God.
Blame the
Ah,
dice, not me.
well, as you can see, I'm a Wheel of Time fan.
I never would have guessed. For anybody
So
who's listening to this in
I
audio, there's a bookshelf with the entire Wheel of Time series behind him that
Yeah.
like
yeah.
spans into infinity off in the distance because that series is so long.
Yeah. Gosh.
Anyway,
So I'm gonna have to go with for those of you who are Wheel of Time fans, I'm gonna have to go with the land because he's a warder and he's just big and bad, especially in the first book, and you need protection. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna go with him. Golly, you would have to ask me this question. I need somebody who's Mistborn, without question. There's just something about that
definitely.
magic
Aha.
system that would just seem to be epic. I don't even care who it is, whether it's Vin or whatever. I don't care. If they can down the metallics and just do it, I'm gonna go with them. And then the third
Okay.
one, I'm gonna go with Samwise. I mean, you need somebody to
Solid
carry you
choice.
Am I?
all the time now. So
Nice.
Have you
so
seen the
those are
meme
my
that says, what is it? Something about Frodo. Oh, I can't throw the ring in, and Sam says, I can't throw it in for you, but I can throw you.
Yeah. And it's Frodo going into the lava.
hey. I like it. So yeah, those are my three.
Okay. Um, so I guess I'm up. I'll roll next. All right. Who is your captain? Not just Star Trek, not just Star Wars, but your captain. It could be a real life
Mm.
person or a fictional character.
For those playing along at home, apparently he rolled an A on a D6. Let me just, head over in here for a minute. Where did my mouse cursor go? I'm
Oh,
gonna
my
fix that while we're.
captain. Um, let's see. You know, I'm just gonna go classic. I'll go Kirk. You know,
Okay.
I mean the original captain. I mean, so um, I was more of a next generation guy, but there's something about Captain Kirk I've always liked. Just
All right.
so sacrifice the red shirts. He's gonna he's got he's gonna protect you somehow. So others before him. So I'm gonna go Kirk.
Okay.
That works.
All right.
Yeah, Captain Kirk will be available to help you with your questing needs right after he serves a sentence for inappropriate conduct with female officers. But
Yeah, there you
am I wrong?
No.
No, you're not wrong.
All right. And
Oh, he's
finally,
howling.
on the random, uh, any music that gets the words flowing. Wait, Liberty was supposed to ask that.
It's
Go
okay.
ahead now.
No, you already asked it. It doesn't matter.
No, you have to ask it. It was your question. We'll edit it later. Oh wait.
I'm not editing anymore.
What was the question?
What kind of music
Oh, what kind of music gets the words flowing? I'm a weird writer. I like noise behind me. So I usually go to the coffee shops and just write and tune out the voices and things like that. But usually when I am writing, I listen to podcasts. Usually it's soundtracks or something like that. I'll download playlists. I think Brandon Sanderson had one for his light book he put out. That's really good playlist. Sometimes it's the piano guys. I kind of like their stuff. It just kind of
Nice.
slows me down. So yeah, those are some of the book. Usually it's some sort of instrumental, epic type of thing. Who's that violinist? That girl? I
Lindsay
can't think
Sterling?
of
Lindsay
her name.
Sterling.
Yeah, she does some good stuff too. And But sometimes I just take the headphones out and just tune out the conversation going around me. You know, I can't work silent. I don't know what it is. It just can't. It just doesn't work. So, but yeah, those are some of the things I listen to. And Sanderson's playlist, he's got a couple of playlists out there that he listens to on the Stormlight archive and things like that. So those are pretty good. Check those out if you're a writer.
Cool. So,
Are we rolling again?
nope.
Nope.
Not 10 times. Aaron? And I can't hear Aaron.
Oh, sorry.
There we go.
Aaron?
All right, my turn, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's up next for you? You mentioned you're already working on book 3 in the Oz series. Are you have anything planned beyond that, or?
Right now, I have 10 books planned in the Iggy and Oz series, or 10 ideas. I know I want it to be 10 books, and the last book is going to be the Book of Secrets, and that's where the mystery surrounding Mr. Chesterton is going to come to an end, and you're going to find out all this information. So the story arc of Mr. Chesterton is kind of always in the background, and they're always piecing together pieces of the puzzle, and I know what that is. I just don't know what every individual book is going to end up being. So right
Very
now,
nice.
the Soda Pop Wars is written, and then I started the Living Snot. I've never been a big NaNoWriMo guy, but it just kind of worked out perfectly where I could do it this year, and so I'm writing the Living Snot. Although an Iggy and Oz book is only 25,000 words. So
Well, you can crank out 2 of them this month.
Yeah. So
Sure.
I'm cranking out the Living Snot this month, and then I'm also doing a side story called Whiskers' Revenge. For those that have read the book, they know who Whiskers the cat is, who Oz always seems to do something accidentally bad to.
Oh, poor cat.
And so Whiskers' Revenge is going to be coming out in February, and that's just for newsletter subscribers. And so you have to be on my newsletter to get that. And it's going to be about half the size of a normal Iggy and Oz, so about 13,000 words. So I'm gonna work that this month. I have it all planned out. I'm not a huge outliner, but I do know all the specific plot threads and things like that I want to do. So those are the 2 books I'm working on now. Soda Pop Wars is done. I need to get it to an editor, so to get it cleaned up. So I'm hoping both of those books will be out in June and in October of next year, and then Whiskers' Revenge in February. Beyond that, I haven't really decided what I'm writing in 2020. It'll be a couple more Iggy and Oz books, and then I might write something else under a pen name outside of JJ. It'd probably just be Jeremy Johnson. That's more along the lines of what I was doing before with a little bit of the dark horror and stuff. But I'm gonna move all those books under Jeremy Johnson instead of JJ Johnson, so that they're kept separate.
So nobody can find you.
That's right. That's right. No, none of the parents can find out that I have a kid that is obsessed with his baseball bat that thinks it's talking to him. So,
unless of course they're watching this.
No, they're not watching this.
Okay, well, that's fine.
How do you not?
I'll put this in my newsletter, and then they'll find out. So I'll put a link to this in my newsletter.
All right, Liberty, do you want to close us out with with the last question?
I sure can.
All right.
So, JJ, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work?
Obviously, his newsletter.
That would be a good one.
That's right, my newsletter. So I am at JJ Johnson Writes on everything. So my website is jjjohnsonwrites.com. Twitter, JJ Johnson Writes. I'm usually there hanging out with other writers and people like Jason Joy and Josh Hart and everybody else. Yeah. And so on Instagram at JJ Johnson Writes and Facebook at JJ Johnson Writes.
Easy to remember.
So what was that again? Is it JJ Johnson author?
That is. Yes. JJ Johnson author.
JJJohnsonTiptoes.com. Wait a minute.
I'm glad you guys are back.
No.
I really am. I remember when you guys launched this podcast back in 2016. You always had fun. on here.
Oh,
And
yes.
of course,
Yeah.
Liberty was always broken about 2 minutes in. So,
Or less if we made our goal.
That's
I'm
the
glad you
goal.
guys are back.
Thank you. It's good
Thank you.
having you back. So yeah, I
Yeah.
have a feeling that they're going. This will be my first D&D game with the guys, and I have a feeling they're going to try to break me very early.
Yes.
And as opposed, I think I'm probably the straightest one in the bunch, so I think it's going to be hard for me.
Oh, yeah.
Look in chat, guys.
Looking
Which chat? Where? Where am I supposed to be looking for
That's
this?
all I'm gonna say.
I'll look for it later. I got too many windows open to.
Yeah.
Okay, um, so we will be back sometime before Thanksgiving with Mr. Big Deal himself, Jason Joyner.
Jason Joyner.
Yes. And
Superheroes.
yes, superheroes. So thank you for joining us, JJ. This was a great time. You guys want to add anything? Anybody?
Actually, I want to say thanks to JJ for coming on with us. It's been really fun, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about is Iggy and Oz, if I can talk right.
Yeah, I definitely have to
Yeah.
get that for my boy now. He'll love those.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. It was fun.
No
Yeah.
problem. Well, thanks for coming on. So
Yeah.
we have one more piece of housekeeping to do now that we're at the end of the show.
All right, I won't
Okay,
click the button yet then.
Yeah,
Okay.
don't hit the button yet. So
I want to push the button.
at the beginning of the show, we mentioned that we are starting Patreon. Josh, we should really go through the levels on that. Do you have that handy?
If you give me a moment, yes.
Okay.
Moment's up.
Well, shoot. All right.
Insert filler music here.
Go for me, Pineda.
Do 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 do.
It should really be a big red button, but instead it's just a gray button. I'm slightly disappointed.
Yes. Okay. So the 3 levels that we have at this point are red shirt for
Uh-oh.
$1
Oh man.
for $1 a month. Backers at this level get a special shout out in our show notes and a bonus episode once a quarter. The blue shirts for $5 a month get everything a red shirt gets, plus a mention on the show.
And they're not wearing a red shirt. That's the biggest bonus right there.
If you don't have a book, you can suggest a question for an upcoming guest. Gold shirts for $15 a month get a sponsorship spot on the show automatically. Also automatically gets you the rewards from the other tiers, plus an extended mention on the show with your book and description, like a short ad spot once a season.
Ooh.
And okay, this needs to be edited slightly.
You can advertise your book to our tens of listeners.
Yes. Once a season, while a sponsor is in good standing, you get your choice of the following. You can guest host a copy of any book by host or co-host who have agreed to it, ebook or audio only, or the best reward of all, you get to name Aaron for an episode within reason, no crude names.
Please help. I suck at naming things, including myself.
So we may be further clarifying that. So just if you are going to join and support us, make sure you double check and make sure that what you're wanting to receive is still part of that level. So
Yes.
we'll be updating that as we're able to. So
Yes. So thanks again for joining us, JJ, and for our tens of listeners.
So, and be sure to check in with After Atlantis Gaming on Twitch tonight for D&D, and you can see the last 10 episodes that do include Josh and Aaron and not me before then, if you have more time than would be allowed,
If
because
you like comedy, fantasy, adventure, you'll love this. It's
yeah.
hilarious.
So
And we will have JJ back on, hopefully in 2020, to learn more about the snot.
That's not.
I'm about to go start writing some more here in just a bit. So.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We are cutting it in 3, 2, 1.
Pushing the big red button!
bye.
Are you sure you want to stop the stream? Yes.